What does it really mean to live as a part of God's kingdom? The Sermon on the Mount holds the key to answering that question. It's not just a bunch of old teachings, it's a guidebook for kingdom living, and it's just as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. Jesus' words challenge us to reflect on who we are, how we treat others, and how we relate to the world around us. So, if you're ready to explore what it truly means to live a life that reflects Jesus' teachings, join us on today's episode of Story of Grace as we dive into these life-changing lessons. Jesus' words on the mountaintop hold truths that can change everything about how we live in His kingdom. Let's break it down and see what kingdom living is all about. Blessed are the poor in spirit. What if your weaknesses, your struggles, and your limitations could actually be a gateway to God's greatest blessings? Jesus begins His Sermon on the Mount with a countercultural statement. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In a world that values strength, success, and power, Jesus flips the script. He calls the poor in spirit, those who are humble, who recognize their need for God, blessed. It's not about financial poverty, but about understanding that without God, we are nothing. Jesus is inviting us to embrace humility and trust in God's sufficiency. His kingdom belongs to those who recognize their dependence on Him. It's not easy to admit we need help. But when we do, it's in that place of brokenness that God's grace and power can work wonders. Have you ever found strength in admitting you don't have all the answers? That's the beauty of God's grace. It meets us where we are, in our moments of weakness, and lifts us up. When we humble ourselves, God can do incredible things in us and through us. Jesus' words show us that kingdom living starts with a humble heart, acknowledging our dependence on God and letting His power be our strength. The call to be salt and light. Have you ever thought about your role in the world? Jesus says that His followers are called to be salt and light. Salt preserves and flavors, and light illuminates and guides. But how does this relate to kingdom living? When Jesus calls us to be salt, He's calling us to preserve what's good in this world, to add flavor, and to stand for righteousness. Light, on the other hand, is meant to shine in a dark world. It doesn't hide under a bowl. It's meant to be seen, to guide people toward the truth of God's love. Think about it for a moment. How can you be salt and light in your own life? It might look like standing up for what's right in the face of injustice, or loving someone who doesn't deserve it. Jesus is calling us to live in such a way that others are drawn to Him. Our lives should reflect His goodness, mercy, and love, shining bright in a world that so desperately needs it. The more we let our light shine, the more we impact those around us. Just as salt brings out the flavor in food, our presence should bring out the beauty and truth of God in the world. Love your enemies. Here's a teaching from Jesus that's both radical and challenging. Love your enemies. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus commands us to love not just the people who are easy to love, but even those who hurt us. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This goes against everything we've been taught in a world that often seeks revenge and holds grudges. But Jesus calls us to a higher standard. He's asking us to reflect the kind of love God has for us, a love that is unconditional, even when we don't deserve it. Loving your enemies doesn't mean you ignore the wrongs done to you. Instead, it's about choosing to forgive, choosing to let go of bitterness, and choosing to show kindness even when it's hard. It's easy to love the people who love us back, but Jesus says that kingdom living means loving those who oppose us. It's a powerful witness to the world when we can love our enemies. It's a radical love that can change hearts and transform lives. Do not worry. What's keeping you up at night? What are you worrying about right now? In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says something that might just change the way you approach anxiety. Do not worry about your life. He challenges us not to be anxious about what we will eat, what we will wear, or even what the future holds. Instead, Jesus tells us to trust God, to seek His kingdom first, and everything else will fall into place. This doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing, but it means we shift our focus from worrying about the unknown to trusting God with everything. When we make God's kingdom our priority, we start to realize that He will take care of our needs. Stress and anxiety often come from trying to control things that are out of our hands. But when we surrender those things to God, we can experience true peace. Jesus wants us to live with trust in Him, knowing that He's got our backs. The Golden Rule. What if the secret to transforming the world around you is as simple as treating others the way you want to be treated? In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus gives us the Golden Rule. Do to others what you would have them do to you. This simple but powerful command changes everything about how we interact with others. It's easy to treat people well when they treat us well, but Jesus is calling us to go further. He wants us to treat everyone with kindness and respect, no matter who they are. This rule is the foundation of kingdom living. If we all lived by this rule, imagine how different our world would be. It's about empathy and understanding, putting ourselves in other people's shoes and treating them with the same love and compassion we would want for ourselves. Jesus is calling us to live out this radical love in every interaction, making the world a better place, one kind act at a time. When we follow the Golden Rule, we reflect God's love to the world. Seek first the kingdom of God. What does it mean to seek first the kingdom of God? Jesus tells us to prioritize God's kingdom above everything else. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, Jesus reminds us that when we focus on His kingdom, everything else falls into place. This isn't about neglecting our responsibilities or desires, but about putting God's will first. When we live with kingdom values at the center of our lives, everything else, our relationships, our work, our goals, becomes aligned with His purposes. Jesus wants us to seek His righteousness, to live in such a way that reflects His heart. When we do this, we trust that God will take care of the rest. The kingdom of God isn't just a future hope. It's something we are called to live out here and now. Prioritizing God's kingdom leads to a life filled with purpose, peace, and joy. Judging others. How easy is it to judge others? Jesus warns us in the Sermon on the Mount not to judge others. Do not judge, or you too will be judged. It's easy to point out the flaws in others, but Jesus challenges us to look inward before we criticize. When we judge others, we forget about our own shortcomings. Jesus calls us to show mercy, to look at others with compassion rather than condemnation. Instead of focusing on the faults of others, Jesus encourages us to examine our own hearts. When we judge others, we often do so from a place of pride or superiority. But kingdom living means we approach others with humility, understanding that we too are in need of grace. Jesus isn't saying we shouldn't ever correct or help others, but he's reminding us to do so with a heart of love, not judgment. When we approach others with grace, we reflect God's love and mercy. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches us what it means to live as part of God's kingdom. These teachings challenge us to live radically different lives marked by humility, love, grace, and trust in God. Jesus shows us a way of life that is countercultural, one that reflects God's heart and leads to true fulfillment. As we live out these teachings, we become more like Christ and have the opportunity to impact the world around us in powerful ways. If you want to live a life that reflects kingdom values, start by embracing these lessons today. Remember, the kingdom of God is not just something to look forward to. It's something we are called to live out right now. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to Story of Grace for more powerful insights and teachings that will inspire and encourage you on your journey of faith.